So the news that we all knew was going to come eventually has arrived, and that is that the 2034 FIFA World Cup will be held in Saudi Arabia. This has been pretty much a known secret for a while now. The only bid that was even accepted by FIFA to be part of the bidding process was actually the Saudi Arabian bid. There was interest shown by other nations, but I just wanted to do a video just, confirming this is now the case, that 100% this is happening, and also go into how in truth Saudi Arabia have, I don't know if you want to call it stolen, I don't know if you want to call it rigged, I don't know if you want to call it bought, whatever you want to call it. This process was very much a setup, and it was near as damn it just basically Saudi Arabia buying the World Cup. That's what I would describe it as. I wouldn't say they've stolen it, they haven't done anything overtly illegal when it comes to this, but the way this whole process went about itself is very dodgy, to say the least. And just looking at the surface of it, you might think, well, Qatar has hosted the World Cup in 2022, why can't a Middle Eastern nation such as Saudi Arabia host the World Cup? And in principle, I have no problem with that. I don't really care, to be honest. It's not the worst thing at the end of the day. I do think it's not so great that FIFA does go to these countries that have very questionable records, but this is nothing new. Yes, of course, recently with Qatar was very controversial. Russia in 2018, very controversial. I mean, look at Russia now. It's very much the pariah of the international community. They can't even qualify for the 2026 World Cup, I don't believe, because of the sanctions on them. FIFA has always done this. FIFA's gone to questionable countries for a very long time. They went to fascist Italy in the 1930s for the World Cup. They went to fascist dictatorship Argentina in the 1970s as well. This is nothing new. Think about where the 1936 Olympics were held as well. Germany. And who ruled Germany at that time? If you don't know the answer to that, you don't know your history very well. So it's not just FIFA, it's not just the Olympics, it's not just international sporting events. These have always had a certain amount of baggage, really, when it comes to this. But this one is one of the most egregious, really, when it comes to a dodgy bidding process. And let me just explain what I mean by that. So in FIFA, the rule is that you can't host the World Cup if you're from a confederation that has hosted either of the previous two World Cups. So what that basically means in these terms is that the soonest that Saudi Arabia could have hosted the World Cup after Qatar hosted it in 2022 was 2034. Asian Confederation nations were not able to bid on either the 2026 or 2030 World Cups. So the 2034 bid was, of course, put in by Saudi Arabia, and it was put in at very much the 11th hour and very early at the same time. And what I mean by that is that it's 10 years now until 2034, which I'm sure anybody with a calculator or a very long calendar could be able to tell you. But that's a long time to actually announce the event in the future, and the bidding process for this was only announced very briefly and then closed almost a few days after. And in that time, just purely coincidentally, the Saudi Arabians already had a bid ready to go. Literally, as soon as the announcement was made that the 2034 bid process was opened by FIFA, the Saudis put their bid in pretty much straight away. It was almost like it was pre-prepared, like they had advance warning of it, allegedly. That's not been proven, but come on. You can't draft like a 500-page document or whatever their bid was, because these bids are like book size. They're massive. They're hundreds of pages of documentation that proves how they are ready to host the World Cup, how they would do so, the infrastructure, everything like that, right? So that was already planned there. But then there wasn't enough time for anybody to put a bid in. But the thing is as well, on top of this, there wasn't anybody able to put a bid in really from any other confederation other than Asia. I'll explain what I mean by that. So, like I said, the previous two World Cups before 2034 are, of course, those in the United States, Mexico, and Canada. So all the nations from the North American Confederation, I believe it is CONCACAF. I do get mixed up between CONCACAF and CONMEBOL. I think CONMEBOL is South America. Could be wrong with that, but anyway, we'll move on. The North American Confederation, so they can't bid to do it because they hosted in 2026. Now, the 2030 World Cup is a very controversial one as well, because that was confirmed, I think officially confirmed now, properly, but this is a very odd tournament, to say the least. This tournament will take place primarily in Spain and Morocco. Spain, of course, in Europe, Morocco in Africa. So If the bid was accepted for this, then of course no team from either Europe or Africa could bid to host the World Cup in 2034 because they'd be hosting it in 2030. Now the only competition to all this was South America. And South America, of course, last hosted the World Cup in 2014 when Brazil did so. So they were free to make a bid. But behind closed doors, some very dodgy dealings most likely happened. Some strange and very controversial plans to actually combine the bid from South America, which I believe is Uruguay, Paraguay, and Brazil, the South American bid, and combine it with that bid from Africa and Europe, the Spanish-Moroccan bid. So now the 2030 World Cup is confirmed to have 6 host nations across 3 continents. It's ridiculous, but it's happening. The first few matches of the 2030 World Cup will be held in South America. I believe it's Paraguay, Uruguay, and Brazil. 3 South American nations anyway. That's the important thing. That's what matters for this one. Now, the reason and the branding for this is the centenary of the World Cup. Of course, the first ever World Cup was held in 1930 in Uruguay, and Uruguay actually won the first World Cup as well. So it's kind of a celebration of that, which I'm not against, but why not just have it as a South American tournament, man? I love the South American fans. It was great in Brazil. Not perfect, of course, a lot of controversy around it, of course there was, but from a footballing perspective, you know, Brazil is still the most iconic team in international football. Forget about England, Spain, Germany, France. Brazil are the ones, man. Brazil are the ones. You know, 5 World Cups. Some of the most beautiful teams in the world, right? Incredible. Not in the same league as what they were back in the day, but historically speaking, Brazil is football when it comes to this. England may have invented the game, but Brazil make it beautiful. They made it joga bonito. You know, they make it the beautiful game, and I absolutely agree with them on that. So they absolutely should be able to host the World Cup, even if it's just, you know, combined with Uruguay or whatever because of historical reasons, and they're just throwing Paraguay in there. Why not? But it's just incredible. So because of that 2030 bid being across 3 confederations, across 5 countries. Sorry, I said 6 before. It's actually 5, unless Portugal's now involved. Honestly, I've lost track of how many different countries. But anyway, the important thing is there's 3 confederations, which is just obscene. There's never been I mean, we have 3 host nations for the 2026 World Cup, but they're all in the same confederation. The 2030 World Cup is going to be played across 3 confederations. That's never been done before. In fact, aside from the US, Mexico, and Canada in 26, and South Korea, Japan in 2002, the World Cup has never been shared between 2 or more nations before. It's going to be a farcical tournament, and the travel expense and the environmental impact is going to be awful as well. Now, I could rant on about that for ages, but the important thing is now, because of that, now Africa, Europe, South America, and North America are all unable to bid. And now you'll probably say, but what about Oceania? Well, come on guys, Oceania is never going to host the World Cup. It can't. It doesn't have the infrastructure. And again, you might be saying, oh, but what about Australia? They hosted the Women's World Cup in 2023. Correct, they did. But they are not an oceanic nation in terms of football. Geographically, they are. They are part of Australia, New Zealand, and all the Pacific Island territories that make up Oceania. However, Australia is an Asian Confederation nation. They go through their FIFA World Cup qualifying in the Asian Confederation. They have done so since, I think it was 2006 they switched. And also on top of that, presumably they compete in the Asian Cup. I'll be honest, I don't really follow the Asian Cup. So because of that, Oceania can never put in a bid. They can never do it. They just don't have the infrastructure. The only country that would be close to doing so would be New Zealand. And with the greatest respect to the Kiwis in New Zealand, you know, it's a million miles off being able to host a FIFA World Cup. And football's not their main thing. They're more into rugby and cricket. It's not really their main thing. So realistically, Oceania is never going to be able to do it. So then you've got Asia. And apparently there were some bids that were, you know, different to the Saudis. I think Indonesia tried to, Malaysia tried to. They tried to get on the action, but they were just basically voted down. The Saudis, allegedly, telling other people in the Asian Confederation, like, don't vote for them, vote for us. Support us. Don't vote for them. Don't do it. And allegedly, there were some deals. Allegedly, there were some payments potentially made. And before you go saying, "Oh, that's a big accusation," there, it's an allegation. I have no proof for this, but it would not surprise me in 10, 15 years down the line how a lot of these dodgy dealings when it comes to the voting process actually come out to be, these accusations get found to be true. Because we've already seen it. We've already seen this with how the World Cup was won in 2006 for Germany. There was some dodgy stuff happening there. 2010 for South Africa, dodgy stuff. Not Brazil, well, maybe Brazil as well. I'm not too sure on that one, but Russia definitely, Qatar definitely as well, 100%. Where nations basically are, they buy the votes, and this all comes into how the voting process comes about as well. Because a lot of these, so every country that's in FIFA has equal voting rights. So that means that even a small, tiny Caribbean nation or a small oceanic nation has the same voting power as multiple World Cup winners such as Brazil, Argentina, and Germany. They have the same voting right. It's equal. Every country has that one vote. So with these smaller nations, like has been proven before, the FIFA headquarters were not raided for no good reason by the FBI. They actually bought the votes for these small nations. I think Trinidad and Tobago, Barbados, countries like that, a lot of the Caribbean nations, those votes were bought. So yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if we get to a point where there's something similar happening like that. And listen, it's not uncommon. I will just sign off by saying this. It's not uncommon for confederations to implore other nations in their confederation to support their bid. That's not uncommon at all. However, when there are multiple bids that are being put in from the same confederation, it is very irregular for a country to basically say, no, don't vote for them, vote for us. It's very uncommon because, you're competing against people in your same team, effectively, for lack of a better term, your own confederation. For example, it wouldn't be uncommon for England to say, don't vote for the Saudis, even though England have actually said, do vote for the Saudis. They supported this bid, which I think is pretty telling about where the FA's loyalties lie these days, but that's another discussion for another day. It's not uncommon for, it wouldn't be uncommon for someone like England or Scotland or wherever in Europe to say, no, don't vote for the Saudis, vote for Germany, vote for a UEFA nation, for example. But for Saudi to come out and say, don't vote for Indonesia, don't even think about putting a bid in Indonesia, don't do it. Don't do it. You know you shouldn't do that. That is very uncommon, and to do it so overtly is very poor, in my opinion. But there we go, guys. The 2034 World Cup will be going to Saudi Arabia. It might well be another winter tournament. From a spectacle point of view, it'll probably be great. They're going to invest billions in it. But from a moral point of view, from a humanities point of view, just like Russia and Qatar, this is a very dark day for football. But unfortunately, it's the world we live in. It's what Saudi Arabia want to do. I don't have time to get into that. I've ranted for a long time on this. But yeah, if you want to hear some more about the Saudi bid, go and check out my video reacting to the idea that Neom, the city that's not even built yet in the desert, is going to have a stadium that is built 300 meters up in the air. Yes, they're actually doing that. There's a video already doing that. And of course, for much more news and opinions on the world of football, good and bad, do keep it tuned here to thefootballchronicle.com. Like, share, comment, subscribe, ring the bell as well, and we'll see you very soon, guys. Have a good one.